the market has almost been pricing things as if they might be the only show in town. And so when the DeepSeek situation came up last week, it showed that competition could be had. Afternoon. I hope everybody's staying safe and warm here in the snow. We have a lot to cover here this week with income, spending, inflation, and the start of jobs week on top of a big kind of story around AI, which we'll address in our question of the week. My name is Brandon Steele, financial advisor with Mainsail Financial Group here in Bellevue. And our goal every Thursday is to bring to you the market news, the data, the trends that we're watching, hopefully weed out some of the noise here along the way. So we'll jump right into things here this week. So first off, I want to touch on some data that came out last Friday. So last Friday, we had income, spending, and the PCE index or inflation all come out on the same day. What came out was we saw income was up 0.4%. Spending was up 0.7%. So I know for those who tune in pretty regularly, you also know spending in the consumer remains to be a strong point in the economy, as it has been for a long time, even with inflation and you name it, as part of that concern. It certainly spending has been up. So that I think is showing some strength, I guess, or why we're seeing some strength in the economy still as well. We also had inflation come out. So the PCE index showed up 0.3%. And the core PCE index was up 0.2%. Both of those were honestly right in line with expectations. So not a whole lot to discuss here. That said, as a tip of the cards, coming up next week, we have CPI and PPI. So we will have some more inflation data to kind of back up some of these numbers next week as well. But for the most part, these were right in line with expectations. And then, of course, we have jobs week here this week. So on Tuesday, we had job openings come out. Job openings were at 7.6 million, so just a little bit below expectations. But then Wednesday, we also had the ADP employment report come out, which shows that we added 183,000 jobs, slightly above expectations. So definitely something to keep an eye on here as it relates to the Fed meeting there just last week. We talked a lot about what we kind of took out of that Fed press conference. And, the gist of it is inflation and jobs, which is no surprise, but those are the two areas to watch. And if the jobs market remains hot and inflation cools down, we could see the Fed get back on path to doing something different. But otherwise, obviously next week as we get the CPI and PPI data, we'll have a better idea as well. Plus tomorrow we get the employment report data. So we get non-farm payrolls tomorrow. So that'll be really important to watch. Again, the ADP employment report is helpful, but really where the market turns for the most part is the employment report that we get on Friday. So we will be covering a lot next week with CPI, PPI, and then of course finishing off the jobs week data here with the employment report that we get tomorrow. In the meantime, I do want to address a really great question of the week that actually came from just an internal discussion with our advisor team just yesterday. So the big question was really around AI and impacts moving forward. Obviously, this is off of the back of last week, really, this DeepSeek AI situation that came up that showed that there could be some competition at work. And we saw a big drop in some of the tech leaders, let's call it, in that space. Now that bounced back pretty quickly, but nonetheless, it was a huge story last week. And that theme has continued in general with, the market news and a lot of conversations around AI, including internally here. So the question is like, what does this actually mean? And I think what I want to highlight is two different aspects of AI and how it could translate to markets and profitability and all these different, investment considerations. One of the things I'll highlight is that I think when we talk about AI, and I'm going to highlight maybe the DeepSeek situation for starters, is that there obviously are some really great companies leading that way in the AI space, right? NVIDIA, Apple, Microsoft, Google, right? All these giant tech companies are certainly putting a lot of money into this space. They talk about it every earnings call, you name it. And that has led to some significant growth in their stock price over the last, year and change. However, what I think has been happening is that the market has almost been pricing things as if they might be the only show in town. And so when the DeepSeek situation came up last week, it showed that competition could be had. And so I think that, as we look forward, I think that's an important lens to consider is, do we really think that these companies are the only ones that can compete in this space? Or is it possible that, some other companies may come along and disrupt things? I won't necessarily answer that. I'll leave that open for the time being, but that is a big question to ask. And then the second part of what I wanted to address with AI that came up in our conversation is when we talk about AI for other companies, right, in terms of implementation of AI. Obviously, it's been a little bit slower than maybe originally expected, but it's being used, and a lot of companies are looking towards AI to find efficiencies, which is huge. However, what I will share is that there's a lot of competition. This goes back, I guess, to point one in a way as well, but there's a lot of competition. And so although AI may help profitability in the short run, eventually, as other companies, this is more broadly looking at things more broadly too, other than just companies that are leading in the AI space, but companies that are using it. As we look more broadly like that, let's say a company adopts AI, but their competitor does a month later, eventually they might have found efficiencies and profitability in the short run, but eventually if everybody's using the same technology, what happens is other companies, because of competition, will start to invest in other areas, whether it's, customers, clients, you name it, or investments in their future, who knows? But the gist of it is that they're going to use those profits to reinvest so that they can be even more competitive. And so what happens is over time that efficiency, I shouldn't say efficiency, that profitability might get kind of caught up in other investments down the road. So it's important to look at AI and how that plays into companies' profitability. But again, I think as we look a little further down the road, there may be more competition as well, which might, downplay some of that as a result. So really good question, really good conversation that we had in general with the team recently. So figured I would bring that to the table, but hopefully that's helpful. Have a great upcoming weekend. Enjoy the snow if we get more of it. And we'll see you next Thursday to talk about inflation and finish up the jobs numbers here that we get tomorrow.